The Tampa Bay Buccaneers just had their best team win of the season. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this live post-game reaction episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, here with you every Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Biggest takeaways and game balls coming up in a little bit, but let's start with a very happy birthday wish to Cara. I hope you had an absolutely great birthday, Cara. I'm glad the Bucs were able to get you a win on your weekend. But now let's talk about the biggest moment in this one. 2 weeks in a row now. We look to Mike Evans as the guy that had the biggest play in the game. Trailing 17-13 in the third quarter, the Bucs defense stepped up to get a quick 3-and-out against the Chargers offense. They got the ball back in the hands of Baker Mayfield, and the Bucs offense that had turned the ball over twice in a span of 4 plays during the second quarter. I don't know if there's a worse football team in the NFL outside of the Bucs in the second quarter, but they bounced back. On 2nd and 13, Baker found Mike Evans, who took the ball 57 yards to the house for a 20-17 lead, and the Bucs never looked back. I mentioned on the Blitz with my guy Evan Klosky and David Shealy that I thought Baker's turnover issues were because he was pressing too much. He was trying to make too much happen. We saw it with his interception early in the second quarter. Then he nearly had another one. Luckily, Mike Evans was there to break up that pass, but he was pressing again. He forced a bad ball into double coverage to Mike Evans that was nearly interception. But the play to Mike that went for 57 yards and a score did a few things. Number one, it gave the Bucs the lead, and that was great. That was fantastic. But it settled Baker down. He was relaxed the rest of the way, and the results were there because of it. Baker finished with 288 and 4 touchdowns against the NFL's top scoring defense. The Chargers were the 4th best red zone defense in the NFL coming into this game. Once Baker was relaxed, he was hitting receivers all over the place. He was scrambling and picking up tough yards, even if most of them were called back because of holding penalties. I was talking to a longtime listener, Matt. You all know Matt from Morven, Georgia. But we were chatting the other day about Baker taking too many sacks because he's holding the ball too long, waiting for Mike Evans to get open, trying to force him to that 1,000-yard mark. We know how important it is to Mike Evans, but it might be even more important to Baker Mayfield to make sure that Mike doesn't lose that streak when he's the one who's throwing the ball. But those yards will come if he just plays the way that he has all season. And that's exactly what we saw in the second half of this game. After that play, Baker completed 6 of his next 7 passes, had 2 more touchdowns, and the run game really took off as well. It was the backbone of the Bucs offense most of the second half. I said it over and over and over leading up to this game that the running attack needed to be successful, and the Bucs had to chew up clock in this one. Well, they won time of possession by over 13 minutes. They averaged 5.7 yards per carry. That, ladies and gentlemen, is 2024 Buccaneers football. 506 total yards, 288 from Baker Mayfield, 223 on the ground. I realize that math doesn't add up. You remove the yardage from the sacks, it means 283 total passing yards, all that. Anyway, Bucky was outstanding. He didn't look hampered by his injuries at all. Rachaad bounced back after his fumble, which was really just a great defensive play. I'm not going to blame, Rachaad for that fumble. He was fighting for a first down. Bosa made a great play, forced the turnover. The offense got rolling in the second half, and we all loved it. It all started with Mike Evans' 57-yard touchdown. But let's talk about the defense for just a minute. What a game. What a game from the defensive side of the ball. You have an interception by Jamel Dean. You have a forced fumble by Vi Jones, and it was recovered by Kayvon Merriweather. They held the Chargers to 0 for 6 on third down, 0 for 2 on fourth down. They sacked Justin Herbert 3 times. They held the Chargers to 3 first downs in the entire second half. When you're missing your top 3 safeties, when you're missing your starting inside linebacker, when your backup safety is dealing with a groin injury, and the other starting safety was signed off of the street last week, that was an all-time performance by this defense. They answered every call and had their best performance of the year. Yes, this was even better than the game in Detroit against the Lions in week 2. I know they were banged up in that game too, but not to the extent that they were on the road against the Chargers, and they pitched a second half shutout. They got 2 takeaways from the team that had the fewest in the NFL coming into this game. For all the bashing and the hate that gets directed at Todd Bowles, and I know I'm as guilty as anyone. I have ripped him up and down on this show on occasions, but he deserves a standing ovation for having this defense ready to play at this level against the Chargers. It was as perfect as you could ask for under the circumstances, and outside of the opening drive going for 70 yards and then a 51 drive that ended in a field goal, the Bucs did not allow the Chargers offense to have a drive of more than 35 yards for the rest of the game. It was truly an outstanding performance, and that defense deserves a ton of praise and a ton of credit for what we witnessed on Sunday. Now, they can't get complacent. They cannot rest on their laurels like we have seen during this season up to this point. The Cowboys may be bad this year, but they still have some dangerous players. So the defense still has to bring their A game on the road next week in Jerry World. But for all the fun that the offense had, and for all the fun that you guys had watching Bucky and Mike and Baker and Cade and McMillan, the Bucs defense deserves a hat tip, a standing ovation, a gold star, whatever you want to say. And they deserve every bit of praise that's going to be heaped upon them in the next day or two as people are going back and looking at how this game went. Because that was, in my opinion, a stunning and absolutely superhuman level of play from this Buccaneers defense compared to what we have seen throughout this season. When you're down that many players and you are elevating practice squad members that were just signed a week ago, and you go into someone's house and you slap them around the way the Bucs did to the Chargers, bravo. I mean, what else can you say? That was absolutely incredible. Going to jump into the chat real quick. We got Justin giving a round of applause with some clapping emojis here. We got David, my dude David. Dean caught the ball. Shout out to Salty Buck on Twitter. He tweeted out yesterday. Someone had posted the stat about Justin Herbert and his interception streak, of not throwing interceptions. And Salty Buck tweeted out with that graphic, Jamel Dean has the chance to do the funniest thing ever tomorrow. So he spoke it into existence. Absolutely fantastic job by him. I love that. Reminds me of my guy Bailey, who tweeted out that it was really cool that the Bucs were going to win a Super Bowl on their home field when it was announced that the Bucs were going to host a Super Bowl. And I think the timestamp on that tweet is like 2019. So it reminded me a lot of that. Destined for Greatness says defense came to play today. Absolutely. 100% they did. Gary, balanced pass and run offense. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you love to see it. I'm going to give you my biggest takeaways on both sides of the ball. That is next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. So many of us put all of our focus and energy in making sure that we're there to provide for other people. We always put ourselves on the back burner. That can lead to problems building up from being left there too long. That's why it's so important to treat your mental health with the same care and attention that you give to everyone else in your life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to fit around your busy schedule, so you don't have to leave yourself on the back burner anymore. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. It's that time of year. The college football playoff is back. And with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. The new Locked On NFL is here, and it's 2 shows every day. You got the Madman Tyler Rowland kicking off your morning. You got the Barbershop with Tony Wiggins, add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make it your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Aaron in the chat. Hall played better football. Thanks for calling him out on the last podcast, James. That's what I'm here for. I'm glad he listened, and I'm glad he stepped up. I texted all the insiders. We had a Logan Hall sighting. I was pretty excited about that. Demon Hunter says, Sammer also called the Dean interception on the Loose Cannons podcast. My dude, Sammer of the 813.tv. Mark says that wasn't the Chargers house. That was 50-50 Bucs fans, Raymond James West. Shout out to the Buckaholics. The Buckaholics have been a nationwide group of Buccaneers fans for years and years and years. And they always come out big when the Bucs are on the West Coast. They did a great job invading SoFi. Hat tip to them. The Buckaholics group is absolutely fantastic. Was glad to see. Let's see. I had one more that I wanted to bring up, and now I can't find it. But anyway, let's talk about my biggest takeaways in this one. Let's start with the offensive side. And I'm going to say that the Bucs rushing attack is what will lead them the rest of the way. 5.7 yards per carry on Sunday against the Chargers. That means that since coming out of the bye, the Bucs are averaging 5.6 yards per carry. As a team, they have 768 rushing yards in 4 games. That's absolutely incredible. They were dead last in yards per carry last season and are now one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL. You can credit Bucky Irving for being an explosive beast. You can credit Rachaad for coming on strong in the second half of the season for the second year in a row. You can credit Liam Cohen. You can credit a revamped offensive line, but the truth of the matter is it's all of those pieces coming together. The teams that win in the postseason are the ones that can play defense at a high level and ones that can run the football. The Bucs can definitely do the latter, and while the former is spotty at best, I'm not sure that there's a rushing attack in the NFC outside of maybe Philadelphia that is more dangerous than Tampa's. And who knows what is happening with Saquon Barkley? He got injured on Sunday, so the Bucs could very well be the most dangerous rushing team in the NFC playoffs when those roll around. Yes, even more dangerous than the Detroit Lions duo of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Baker has done a great job of passing in order to set up the run, but at the same time, there are definitely some games where Bucky and Rachaad's ability to gash defenses has set things up for Baker to push the ball down the field. It is so much fun watching a legitimate rushing attack in Tampa again. It's something that we really haven't seen since playoff Lenny. But it's the run game that the Bucs are going to have to continue to lean on these last 3 weeks and into the postseason, assuming that they get there. You know, they control their own destiny. Let's assume that they continue to handle business. So let Bucky Irving rest throughout the week and then be ready to go on Sundays. Let Rachaad White be the late game guy that keeps getting tough yards and first downs. Let Sean Tucker be that specialist kind of guy that also has a little bit of explosiveness in him. It's working. And I can't remember who just said it in the chat, but the Bucs having this incredibly balanced offense is what makes them so dangerous. So continue to lean on that run game because, you know, even when it's not working early in the game, you know, the Chargers were pretty solid in the beginning of the game against the rushing attack. It continues to build and build and build while the defense continues to wear down and break down. So, you know, anytime Bucky's got the ball in his hands, he has the ability to break off a 50-yarder. You know, anytime Rachaad has the ball in his hands, he's going to fight for every single inch. And those are the kinds of players that you want to have the ball. Keep relying on this rushing attack because it really has unlocked a level of this offense that we didn't know that the Bucs had last year. Defensively, my biggest takeaway is that things could have been so different if they were healthy for more of the season. We have seen games now against really good offenses on the road where the defense stood tall and got the job done. We saw them play tough against the Chiefs and the 49ers. We saw them almost seal the deal against the Falcons on the road before that game went to overtime. But I said it last week after the Raiders game, Todd Bowles is doing about as well as he can given the hand that he's been dealt. But you can't let off the gas. The defense has to keep up this level of play the rest of the year. Mistakes on offense are still happening, and the defense has to continue to answer the call. Offenses that they face are going to continue to be good, and the defense has to answer the call. They cannot go into the playoffs and take on the Eagles or the Lions and let those teams put up 40 plus. It turns it into an impossible situation. Talked at the top of the show about how Baker's been pushing the issue. He's been pressing a little too much, trying to force things to happen. If the defense is allowing 30, 40 points in a game, Baker is going to press the issue. He's going to try to force the offense, and it's going to lead to mistakes and turnovers. Todd Bowles has the chance to really solidify his spot as the head coach over the next month or so if his defense, as shorthanded and beat up as they are, plays to the same level the rest of the year that they did on Sunday. The Cowboys aren't going to roll over. The Panthers aren't going to roll over. The Saints aren't going to roll over. So if the defense comes out flat like they did against the Broncos, like they did against the Ravens, then the Bucs are going to lose. I loved what I saw today from Todd Bowles' squad, even in the first half. They held the Chargers to a field goal on that opening drive before a bad defensive pass interference call gave the Chargers another chance. The Bucs are firmly in the driver's seat and control their own destiny. A win by the Raiders Monday night over the Falcons would help too, but the Bucs don't need it. There's a big difference between getting help because you need it and then getting help while you're already in the driver's seat. And I saw a lot of you talking about Bowles retiring. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But if the defense plays this way against the Cowboys, the Panthers, the Saints, and then into the playoffs, the Bucs are going to have to really struggle with that decision as to whether or not Todd Bowles keeps his job or they promote Liam Cohen, because they're not going to want to let Cohen go. But if Bowles can do this with his defense as beat up as they are, they're probably not going to want to lose Todd either. It's a really, really difficult predicament to be in. All right, game balls are going to be handed out. Start dropping your game balls in the live chat, because that's coming up next on Locked On Bucs. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. The Buccaneers are early 3.5-point road favorites against the Dallas Cowboys next Sunday night with an over-under of 48.5. The Bucs are also plus 3,500 to win the Super Bowl, now ahead of the Rams, Broncos, and Commanders, tied with the Texans and trailing the Steelers and the Packers. Visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Wrapping things up here on this victory edition of a live post-game reaction episode. And Benjamin, I see you in the chat. Happy birthday, good sir. Glad the Bucs came through for you as well on this glorious birthday weekend for a lot of Bucs fans. So glad to see that you are in here. I see a lot of you dropping your game balls in. You guys know the drill. The golden game ball, the player of the game, who else but Michael Lynn Evans? The biggest play of the game and his best performance of the season. 9 receptions on 11 targets for 159 yards and 2 touchdowns. Evans is now at 749 yards on the season. That means he needs 83.6 yards per game the rest of the way to hit 1,000, while keeping in mind he would once again do it in 16 games or less. So adding a game to the schedule has not been one that Evans has needed to get the mark. You know how that can get a little bit wonky sometimes. Of course, you know, the baseball home run record had an asterisk by it for years and years and years because the baseball season got longer. And that's when I believe it was Roger Maris had hit 61 and set the record. Mike Evans hasn't needed 17 games played to hit 1,000 in the last 10 years. If he hits it this year, it's going to be in less than 16, let alone needing 17 games played to hit that mark. Just an absolutely phenomenal performance by the leader of the Buccaneers. Speaking of leaders of the Buccaneers, game ball number 2, my top defensive game ball, it's Lavonte David. An incredible performance by him on the defensive side. He was flying all over the field. He had 2 sacks. He had a team-high 12 tackles. He is the ageless wonder. He continues to get the job done, and he is still hoarding the fountain of youth. I hope Lavonte David plays longer than Tom Brady did. Game ball number 3, my second best offensive player, Bucky Irving. My God, is he just absolutely electric. 117 yards on 15 carries. He broke off a 50-plus yard run. The possession after Mike Evans' 57-yard touchdown. The Bucs entering this game had 3 plays this season of 50-plus yards. They had 2 of them in the third quarter. How? How does this happen? But anytime Bucky touches the ball, it has the chance to be an explosive play. One time, I would like to see him finish one of these huge runs by getting into the end zone. It seems like he's always losing gas right around the 10-yard line, ends up getting caught. I need to see one of these explosive runs and in 6 points. And then game ball number 2 for the defensive side, number 4 overall, it's Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. What a day for JTS, who comes back from injury. It seemed like he was constantly around the ball. He finished with the second most tackles on the day for the Buccaneers. He had some pressures. He got to Herbert a few times for a couple of quarterback hits. Really, really loved what I saw out of him. Want to see him build on that heading into next week against the Cowboys. But to be honest, the entire defense deserves a game ball. Even Logan freaking Hall had a sack and was getting into the mix. He had a couple of quarterback hits. He had a couple of pressures. It was so nice to see him return from witness protection and help this defense out. But the entire defense deserves a game ball because it was a true team effort on that side for the Buccaneers. Every player that set foot on the field for the defense contributed to that win. They contributed to that second half shutout. Vi Jones made plays. Kayvon Merriweather made plays. Even Ryan Neal had a couple of tackles. Jamel Dean, finally, with the interception. He dropped the bricks and found some hands. It was absolutely fantastic. So I cannot say enough about how impressed I was with the defense. All right, going to jump in and start going through as many of these game balls as I can. We got birthday boy Benjamin. He says Mike Evans game ball. We got Gary giving a game ball to Mike Evans and Gus Swayze. We got Lakita game ball for J-Mac, Mike Evans, Levante, and Bucky. Jalen McMillan is coming on strong. I'm going to talk more about, I didn't talk about him at all in this episode. I'm going to talk more about him tomorrow because I am really liking what I'm seeing from Jalen McMillan. I'm going to talk about his impact moving forward the rest of the year. Bodie gives one to J.J. Russell. I like that. He had some really, really good tackles. He was Johnny on the spot. Bantry, game ball to Mike, Bucky, and Baker, but the golden game ball to the entire defense. I love that. Demon Hunter, 2 golden game balls, Bucky and Mike, 4 silver game balls. Baker, both the offensive line and the defensive line, and then Jamel Dean. Schultze, game ball for Vita Vea every game. Can't run the ball on the Bucs. Destined for greatness gives a golden game ball to Mike Evans, Levante David, and Baker Mayfield. Then we got another game ball from Jordan going to J.J. Russell along with Bucky and Mike. You guys have been absolutely fantastic. Benjamin, J-Mac is confident now and looking like the wide receiver we saw in training camp. Absolutely. Jimbo Shrump. J-Mac definitely gets a game ball, the passionate play. Yeah, I'm loving what I'm seeing out of Jalen McMillan, and I'm going to talk about him much more on the next episode. But that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for coming through on the live. Once again, happy birthday to Cara. Happy birthday to Benjamin. Glad we got to celebrate with you both. Please check out everything going on over at the 813.tv. Follow on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs. Subscribe on YouTube with those notifications turned on so you know every time this show is going live. And of course, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to do some one-on-one texting with yours truly. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding Victory Monday. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.